He said, "Vacation's off, Em. Money's tight. You'll understand," and slammed the kitchen door behind him, and 5 minutes later, I was holding their cruise tickets in my hands, dated for the exact week I had canceled my trip to Portugal. And something inside me switched off. Not like anger, but like a circuit breaker. Because I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I opened my phone camera and started documenting everything. Every paper hidden in the drawer where my mom kept appliance. Manuels. They had lectured me for days about how rent was climbing, utilities were crushing them, how, if you love your family, you'll make the sacrifice. And like the obedient daughter, I swallowed the penalty fee of €270 for canceling my flights. I still have the screenshot of the charge pinned in my favorites as proof of my stupidity. Then I saw the tickets. Barcelona round trip, Mediterranean route, balcony cabin, all-inclusive, excursions prepaid. My parents' names printed clearly, with a note from the cruise company thanking them for choosing the line again. Again. Meaning this wasn't sudden. It was planned, hidden, carefully protected while they guilted me into forfeiting my chance at travel. I held the ticket corners like evidence from a crime scene, and my pulse thundered in my ears like a metronome. Every time they asked me to help out just this once, the Friday promises that never came, the way my money quietly vanished into their lifestyle. It all clicked into place. I went room to room like a detective, snapping photos, my dad's brand new luggage with tags, my mom's excursion printouts for Rome in half a day, and Florence in 6 hours, even the insurance forms. Then I checked her laptop. No password, of course, because family doesn't keep secrets. And read her chat with Aunt Linda. Em canceled her trip, thank God. We don't have to explain why we're going without her. Linda replied, "Smart move. Always control the story. You deserve this." Deserve. I took screenshots, uploaded them to the cloud, duplicated them to a flash drive, because I knew what was coming if I confronted them directly. Gaslighting? At Olympic level, lines like, "How dare you snoop in our things? You don't understand adult problems. A friend gifted us this cruise." They'd twist it until I was the villain. So I didn't shout. I brewed tea. I replaced the papers as if nothing had been touched. Then in my room, I logged into their shared bank account. Years ago, my mom gave me access, just in case. I saw 3 installment payments to the cruise line, plus excursion packages and a captain's dinner. The total was enough to fund my Portugal trip 3 times over. I opened my voice recorder and narrated the transactions out loud, like a case. File. I compiled every urgent money request email from Mom alongside the cruise receipts into a single PDF, naming it familybudgettruth.pdf. I thought of how my father borrowed €300 to cover the garage debt 2 weeks ago, promising to return it by Friday with interest. And then on Friday, he bought Mom a designer bag on sale and winked at me. Girls need their joys, right? I thought of the years I was told to take the bus while my brother got driven because it mattered more for him. I thought of the countless Fridays that turned into vanished debts. And I decided the pattern ended now. That night, after they went to bed, I left one envelope on the kitchen table. Yesterday's utility bill I had paid so they wouldn't get a penalty. On top of it, I placed copies of their cruise tickets. I added a note, short and clinical. Starting July, separate finances, debt repayment plan due by September 30th, enjoy your business trip cruise in June, P.S. My canceled flights cost $270. Receipt attached. I wasn't asking permission. I was issuing terms. In the ICE, morning at 7:06, my mom stood at my bedside, face pale, holding the papers. "What is this?" Her voice quivered with the edge of threat, but I caught fear too. My dad leaned over her shoulder, forcing a smirk. "Drama again?" "No," I said calmly. "Accounting." And in that moment, I understood the fight was only beginning. There would be accusations, guilt trips, phone calls to relatives. But for once, I had evidence, dates, sums, screenshots, and the steady voice to say, "This is the line." And they would never cross it again without paying the price. They didn't explode right away. Not the way I expected. My mom sat at the kitchen table with her face in her hands, whispering about betrayal, about how a daughter shouldn't do this to her parents. My dad paced the room, muttering that I was making a fool out of them, that no one else's kids behave this way. I stayed standing, holding my coffee mug, silent, because silence made them squirm more than any shouting. When they realized I wasn't going to crack, my mom shifted tactics. Tears, shaking shoulders, the whole routine. She said the cruise was doctor's orders, that they needed rest for their health, that I was selfish for begrudging them a little happiness. I listened, recorded her speech on my phone under the table, and when she finally looked up, red-eyed and searching for pity, I asked one question. "Then why did you make me cancel my flights?" She froze, eyes darting to Dad. He snapped back. "Because family comes first," I answered flatly. "Exactly. That's why I'm done being last." That ended the performance. They went quiet, the kind of silence that feels like static in the air. For the next 2 days, they tried different strategies, ignoring me, slamming cabinets, whispering about me on the phone. But when they opened the fridge and found I hadn't done the groceries, when the utility app pinged them with a payment, reminder they used to forward to me, reality set in. My mom knocked on my door late one night and asked timidly, "So, how do we do this separate finances thing?" Her voice was careful, like she knew the ground had shifted. I had my plan ready. I told her debts would be listed, repayments tracked, and if they missed deadlines, I'd send the file, all my screenshots and receipts, to every relative who ever praised them as the most responsible parents. My dad cursed under his breath but didn't argue. I saw it in his eyes. For the first time, they realized I wasn't their ATM anymore. And though they still boarded that cruise ship in June, drinking champagne and posting edited photos with captions about hard-earned rest, they did it with my invoice taped to the fridge at home, counting down the days until repayment. When they finally left for their cruise, suitcase wheels rattling down the driveway, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free. The house was quiet. No passive-aggressive sighs, no guilt-soaked speeches about family duty. I cooked what I wanted, left dishes in the sink just because I could, walked through the rooms without feeling like a servant in my own home. On the 3rd day of their trip, my aunt called me. Her voice was sharp, rehearsed. "Emily, your mom says you've been acting out, causing stress. What's going on?" I pulled up the PDF, attached it to an email, and said, "Read the file, Aunt Linda, then tell me who's causing stress." She hung up. 2 hours later, my mom messaged me from the ship. "How dare you involve family?" I typed back one word, transparency. That silenced her for days. My dad tried a different tactic, sending me a photo of him on deck with the caption, "You should be here, Em." I didn't reply. Instead, I checked my bank app. Repayment number 1 had landed, €100 labeled utilities. It was a start. I knew it wasn't generosity, it was fear of exposure. Still, I smiled. For once, I wasn't the one bled dry. By the time they returned, tan and smug, the atmosphere had changed. They didn't storm in with souvenirs and stories. They unpacked quietly, avoided eye contact. My mom tried to put a necklace box on my bed, a gift from Florence. But I slid it back across the table at dinner. "Apply it toward the balance," I said calmly. Dad muttered something about me being ungrateful. I met his eyes and repeated my mantra. "We're not doing this anymore." He shut his mouth. That was the moment I knew my revenge had landed. Not in fire, not in screaming, but in boundaries they couldn't twist. And for the first time in my life, the guilt wasn't mine. Weeks passed, and the balance sheet I kept on my laptop started to look like justice carved into numbers. Each line item, each repayment chipped away at years of resentment I'd carried like invisible debt. They hated it. I could see it in their stiff posture, in the way they avoided the kitchen when I was there. But they paid anyway. When relatives asked about their summer, they lied with half smiles, calling it a simple trip, never mentioning the luxury balcony cabin. But I had the photos, the receipts, the timestamps of their online posts before they edited them down. Power had shifted, and they knew I could flip the story anytime. One night, Mom slipped into my room with her voice soft, almost unfamiliar. She said she missed when we were close, when I didn't keep score. I told her quietly, "I was close, you were taking. Now I keep score because it's the only way I stay whole." She didn't reply, just left the room like a shadow. Dad tried to buy back control with charm, cracking jokes at dinner, sliding little gifts my way, but I didn't budge. Gifts were liabilities, not love. The final payment came in late September, the exact day I had written on my note months earlier. It landed in my account with the memo line, family. I stared at it for a long moment, then deleted the PDF file from my desktop. Not because they had earned forgiveness, they hadn't, but because I had already won. My revenge wasn't destroying them, it was refusing to be destroyed. It was standing tall, ledger in hand, boundaries like walls they couldn't cross. And as autumn rolled in, I booked a new ticket, this time to Lisbon. No apologies, no cancellations. While packing, I caught my reflection in the mirror, and for the first time, I didn't see the family's scapegoat. I saw a woman who had finally rewritten the rules. By October, something subtle but undeniable had shifted in the air between us. They still tried to reclaim pieces of control with offhand comments. Dad reminding me how much they sacrificed to raise me. Mom sighing dramatically whenever I bought myself something small, like new shoes. But the weight of those words was gone. I didn't flinch, I didn't reach for my wallet. Their disappointment no longer dictated my choices. The funny thing was, once the financial leash snapped, I started noticing how much of my identity had been wrapped around their approval. For years, I measured myself by their moods. If Dad was sulking, I had failed. If Mom smiled at me, I had earned peace. Without that constant grading, I began to breathe differently, walk taller. They didn't know how to respond to this new version of me. At Christmas, relatives gathered, and my parents tried to play the usual script, painting themselves as generous martyrs, complaining about how kids these days don't appreciate. But I caught Aunt Linda's eye across the table and watched her glance away quickly, remembering the PDF I had sent her in June. No one challenged me. No one questioned why I wasn't handing out envelopes of cash or covering unexpected costs. And when dessert came, I stood up first, thanked everyone, and left without lingering to clean up. For once, no one dared to stop me. That night, lying in my own bed, I realized my revenge hadn't been the note or the invoices, or even making them repay every cent. My revenge was freedom. It was teaching them that I could see through the stories, that guilt had expired as currency in my life. They had spent years convincing me love was debt. I had finally rewritten the equation. And from that point on, whenever I booked a flight or poured my coffee or even just closed my bedroom door, I felt it. This life was mine, not theirs. By the time spring rolled around, I had already booked another trip, this one to Lisbon, the city I dreamed of seeing the year they robbed me of it. I didn't ask permission. I didn't announce it like news. I simply bought the ticket with my own card, packed my bag, and told them 2 days before departure. I'll be gone. For a week. The bills are yours while I'm away. The look on their faces was priceless. Dad's mouth half open, Mom clutching her tea mug like it might steady her. They tried the old lines. It's unsafe for you to go alone. Family should plan together. What if something happens and we need you? I just smiled, zipped my suitcase, and said, "You'll figure it out. You always do." And then I left. That week in Lisbon felt like oxygen after years of stale air. I walked cobblestone streets, ate pastries at sunrise, took photos of blue-tiled walls, and not once did my phone buzz with another urgent request. They knew better now. They knew the answer would be no. Sitting by the river one evening, I caught myself laughing out loud, realizing I hadn't felt this light in years. The revenge wasn't about hurting them, it was about proving to myself that their grip on me was broken. When I returned, my house was still standing, the bills were paid late but paid, and my parents were quieter, smaller somehow, like they finally understood I wasn't theirs to manipulate anymore. And as I unpacked, I thought, this is what freedom tastes like. Not bitterness, but the sweetness of finally living on my own terms. ChatGPT Skazal. Summer came again, and with it the date of their next annual trip. I noticed the brochures first, slipped between the pages of a magazine on the counter, Caribbean this time, glossy photos of white sand and turquoise water. But instead of hiding it, they left the folder half open, like bait. When I didn't react, Dad finally asked, "So, are you going to make a scene this year too?" I looked up from my laptop and said calmly, "No scene, just no more lies." The words hung there, sharp as glass, and he had nothing left to throw back. They booked it anyway, of course, but this time they didn't dare touch my savings, didn't invent a sob story about money being tight. They simply went, and I didn't flinch when they left. While they posed on beaches, I was sitting in a cafe with my own plans spread out before me, courses I wanted to take, a list of cities to visit, a savings goal that was mine alone. It struck me that the best revenge had never been exposing them to relatives or forcing repayments, though those victories mattered. The best revenge was that they no longer controlled the narrative of my life. They had raised me to believe family meant sacrifice without end, that my role was to give while they consumed. But when they came back from the Caribbean, faces pink, from the sun lugging duty-free bags, they found me already packing again, this time for Prague. My suitcase by the door was louder than any confrontation. Mom tried a weak smile, saying, "Another vacation? Must be nice." I zipped the case shut and answered, "Yes, it is." And that was it. No fight, no guilt, no apology. Just the quiet realization in their eyes that they couldn't touch me anymore. Not my money, not my choices, not my freedom. By the time I turned 27, the story of that canceled vacation felt like another lifetime, but its echoes shaped everything. I had my own apartment now, a job that paid enough to fund my travels without asking anyone's blessing, and a circle of friends who understood that loyalty meant reciprocity, not sacrifice. My parents still called, still tried to slip in little tests. "Could you cover this bill until next week? Maybe you'll join us for Christmas dinner and bring dessert." But every time, my no came faster, steadier. The shock on their faces had faded into something else. Resignation. They knew the old tricks wouldn't work anymore. What surprised me most was how little rage I carried by then. Revenge hadn't left me bitter, it had left me clear. I didn't need them to admit what they'd done or apologize for the manipulation. Their silence was its own confession. The power was in the fact that I could see through them, that I had rebuilt a life outside their shadow. And sometimes, when I booked a flight or clicked confirm on a hotel reservation, I remembered the girl who cried over lost tickets while her parents toasted their cruise. I wanted to tell her, "Hold on, you'll get here. You'll step onto foreign streets with your head high, knowing every cent, every step, every choice is yours." That was the true ending, not their downfall, but my rise. And the sweetest part? They had front row seats to watch me walk away, again and again, and realize there was nothing they could do to stop me. I always thought revenge would look like some dramatic showdown, voices raised, maybe even tears on the floor, the kind of scene people remember for years. But the real ending was quieter, sharper, and far more permanent than that. It happened slowly, almost invisibly, across the months and years after I found those cruise tickets tucked in a drawer. Every small no I spoke, every bill I refused to pay, every suitcase I packed for myself instead of them, each one was a brick in a wall they could no longer climb. And by the time that wall was finished, I wasn't trapped behind it. I was free on the other side. The final piece came one afternoon, long after the debts had been paid, long after I had taken my trips and come home to my own space. My parents invited me for dinner, a gesture they rarely extended without an agenda. I went anyway, not out of duty, but out of curiosity. I wanted to see what script they were going to try this time. The house looked smaller than I remembered, the curtains drawn against the sun, the smell of overcooked pasta filling the air. My mom fussed over the table, laying out plates like props, while my dad sat stiffly, eyes darting toward me and away, again. When the meal began, the conversation danced around the edges of guilt, how expensive life had become, how hard it was to make ends meet. I waited because I knew the ask was coming, and finally, my mom sighed, lowered her fork, and said, "Emily, maybe you could help us just this once." In the past, those words would have cracked me open. They would have triggered a flood of panic, the guilt running down my spine, the reflex to reach for my wallet even when I had nothing to spare. But now, I only felt the quiet weight of history pressing behind her words. I put down my glass, folded my hands, and answered, "No." Just that. No anger, no lecture, no justification. Her face shifted. First shock, then hurt, then something almost like fear. My dad tried to push, muttering about how children should take care of their parents, about respect, about gratitude. I let him speak until his voice wound down into silence, and then I said, "Respect goes both ways. Gratitude, too. You taught me that family means sacrifice, but what you really meant was sacrifice for you. I've learned my own definition now. It was like the room itself exhaled. They couldn't fight it because I wasn't fighting back. I wasn't in their arena anymore. I had already stepped out years ago, the moment I laid those cruise tickets, on the kitchen table with my invoice on top. They stared at me, maybe waiting for me to soften, to give in, to be the girl they could guilt into anything. But she was gone. I finished my meal calmly, thanked them, and stood. My mom's voice cracked as she called after me. "So that's it? That's how you treat us after everything?" I turned, met her eyes, and said, "No, that's how I protect myself after everything." And then I walked out. That was the last time they ever asked me for money. From then on, the calls became fewer, the conversations shallower. They spoke about weather, about neighbors, about anything except responsibility. And I let them keep their distance. Because the truth was, I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their acknowledgement. I had already won the moment I chose myself over their manipulation. In the years that followed, I built a life that was fully mine. I traveled, I studied, I filled my home with people who gave as much as they took. I learned what generosity feels like when it isn't poisoned with obligation. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, I would think back to that summer when I sat alone in the kitchen holding 2 cruise tickets that were never meant for me. The betrayal had cut deep then, but now it was just a scar. Proof of survival, not of weakness. And the sweetest part of all, they had to watch. They had to see me flourish without them, to see me post photos from Lisbon, from Prague, from places they had once told me I couldn't afford. They had to know, every time I walked out the door with my suitcase in hand, that I wasn't abandoning them. I was simply choosing myself. And there was nothing they could do to stop it. That was my revenge. Not their ruin, not their shame, but my freedom. It was in every boundary they couldn't break, every choice they couldn't control, every mile I traveled on my own terms. They had tried to make me believe that love was debt, that loyalty was silence, that family was a chain. And in the end, I showed them the truth. Family is not ownership, and I was never theirs to spend. So yes, the girl who once cried over canceled. Tickets finally stood on foreign streets, head high, laughing into the open air. And the parents who once robbed her of freedom? They sat at home, smaller than they had ever been, watching as the daughter they tried to control became untouchable. That's the ending I carry with me. Not bitter, not broken, but stronger. Freer and finally mine. Tell me, was I too harsh? Or did I finally give them exactly what they deserved? And that's where we'll leave it, friends. This story was created by me. I'm the author behind the channel Revenge with Sarah. If you felt her journey the way I did, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next story, and drop a comment below. Was she too harsh? Or did she finally give her parents exactly what they deserved? Your thoughts keep this community alive.